Awesome. Thank you guys. That was all really cool. I saw some kind of similarities in some of the soil and massive monkeys specifically. That was really, really neat, but a lot of differences as well. So I'll start us off with a question, and then we'll see if the audience has any. Can each of you just briefly touch on some of the challenges you had when creating your structure or lack of structure, as Soil said? I know some of you mentioned a few of the challenges, but maybe just the biggest challenge you faced in creating that. We'll start with Justin.
Oh, sure. So our biggest challenge was breaking away from a national organization that had a lot of sort of cultural cachet. Dave Eggers has a pretty significant following, and a lot of people really know who he is and really know who the 826 national brand is because of him. And our big fear in leaving was that people would not know who we were anymore, and we would just kind of disappear. But we have found that that hasn't been the case at all, and that leaving has actually allowed us to really expand the vision of what we can do, because we're not constrained by a national organization telling us what to do. So what we thought was going to be a bad thing turned out to be a great thing. So.
I think our biggest challenge was really getting started, not knowing exactly what everybody wanted to do. We spent a lot of time having really deep personal one-on-one conversations and then sort of distilling that information and trying to put it into like tangible and practical next steps. And then figuring out what legally we could do alongside that was an interesting one. But really just seeing how we could begin this thing felt like sort of a big leap that we weren't totally sure how to start.
Okay, so what is our biggest challenge, Paul?
Well,
I think this is our biggest challenge.
Yeah.
We have to agree, right?
Yeah.
You could each have a challenge.
Yeah. Biggest challenge would be coming to the consensus. It could take long, but at the same time, because everyone through the retreats, everyone kind of like is friends, respect each other. So I think everything resolves pretty quickly. But I'm not really sure what's the challenge. Finding
That's
money.
not a bad problem to have.
Besides, you can always change it at the next meeting.
I think one of our biggest challenges, aside from the ones that I talked about earlier, was probably just getting organized, starting up the business, and just because we were all fresh out of high school and never thought we were going to become professional dancers or anything like that. We just loved doing it, and we had to find a way to get organized.
That's great. Does anyone have a question for one or two or four of our presenters? Yeah?
So this may not apply to all of you, but did any of you at any point face internal division or strife about being a nonprofit or having those ideals or values?
That's a great question. And in fact, is everyone a nonprofit? Or yeah, okay, I didn't know. Sorry, the question was, did anybody face any strife or internal division in
self-promotion?
Right.
And then the question beyond that is actually, how was that solved? And maybe all of you were just in organizations that are really good people. So
Right. Yeah, so did you face any internal division when it came to being a nonprofit and the ideals that a nonprofit has? And if so, how did you overcome that?
I'll tackle. I would say that when it comes to being a nonprofit, all of our staff members are pretty committed to our mission and really committed to the nonprofit lifestyle, if there is such a thing. But I think our struggle came with when we were deciding to leave 826. There was a little apprehension, and we don't want to do that. It's a lot of work to have to do. Basically, you're restarting your organization again. You have your board and your leadership and your fundraising intact, and it's already built, but you still have to basically restart the whole machine again. You got to get the word out that you're changing. You have to reaffirm and assure people that it's going to continue and it's going to be strong, and that takes a lot of work. And a lot of work makes for some unhappy campers in the staff. It's part of any nonprofit that has been chugging along at a speed for 9 years. That's a lot of work. So that it made for some long nights and tired mornings and some squabbling, but we're all just chugging along just fine.
Does anyone else have anything to say to that?
Yeah. Well, we were always a nonprofit, but the move to a 501c3 was a little bit of a contentious one. I think, theoretically everyone was on board, and then when we started to talk about what that really meant and what the responsibilities were put on the board and put on the ensemble, and how the relationship was actually going to change when we have a board now that's in charge of the governance of the organization and not just an advisory position. There was a lot of concern on both ends. I think that, and I think we struggled a little bit too because the ensemble had been around for a while as this core group, and I had come in, a year later and was managing this big project and talking to a board that had functioned in a specific way for a while. And so I was like funneling information between the two parties, and we only really solved it with some really careful planning before a large group conversation where we brought everybody together and very pointedly discussed the goals involved and the reasons why. And again, I think I'm also a really big believer in mission. I think and everyone around us rallied behind the purpose of the organization and how we could best serve that purpose. And that's what really ended up helping solve it. But there were a couple months of growing pains and arguments, but it's work, but it's worth it, yeah.
I just wanted to say, we are a nonprofit, and when I first joined Soil, I thought, oh, well, we should have our own 501c3. This was in 2000. And so I went to one of those workshops that Washington Lawyers for the Arts was on, and I thought, no, this will not work for us. So thankfully, there are organizations like Shunpike that can take care of the back end for us.
Do you have anything to add to that, Flo?
Sure. Yeah, so like the division between the for-profit and the nonprofit for us was kind of hard on some people. People were kind of used to getting paid for a lot of shows, and when starting up this nonprofit, we're now going to start asking, some of the members to take time out of their days to do a free show. A lot of us now have families and full-time jobs, and it's going to be, hard for them to, take time off to go and do a free show. So for some of the members, it was pretty hard, just because they have those other commitments. And then for the other members, I mean, it's what they love to do already, so they'll just continue to do it and just keep going.
Awesome. Yes, go ahead.
One thing that I know we all have that doesn't get talked about a lot are failures. And so I would love to hear about some of your guys' failures and if they were possibly helpful for you.
I love that question. Sorry to interrupt. So the question was, we all have failures, And can we talk about some of the failures and possibly what we learned? And I think that's why we have failures, so that we can learn from them. So does anyone want to start that one off specifically?
I guess I can.
Yeah.
Quick. So yeah, failure that we've had would be not preparing enough for competitions or shows, and when we lose that competition, obviously it's hard on us, so we're going to try harder next time, or think, all right, we need to start practicing way before this, but we always kind of don't. We kind of call ourselves the last minute kings because we do everything so last minute, and we're continuing to fail that way.
But it works.
But it works.
Do you have any stories?
The soil's failure is, I think it's small scale failure. So like, oh no, the PR hasn't been sent, or something like the gallery someone didn't show up the gallery to open the gallery, or when we are doing fixing the entire gallery, like there's a disagreement between someone, and then someone stormed out, don't tell me what to do. That kind of things occasionally happen, but it's not tragic. It's always fixable right away. So, but failure is constant, but it's small enough, and we can fix it.
It's funny that you bring up failure, and when we changed our mission to being bold and fearless and really taking those creative risks, we also started talking amongst ourselves and how can we present to youth that failure is okay and making mistakes is perfectly acceptable and the best way to learn. So we've started that conversation, try to work it into programming, and how can you make failure a good thing. I would say for us, we tend to be, it probably maybe didn't come across too much in the slideshow, but we're pretty strange people, and we're pretty unusual. We have an unusual way of doing things and an unconventional way of doing things, and when we have tried to work with the school district, which is very conventional and they have a lot of rules, we do have conflicts with trying to get our programming to mesh with theirs, and they go, why the heck do you want to bring a puppet to this writing workshop? Or why do you want to have a guy standing behind a screen yelling at children? Wow, how is that effective? It's one of the workshops we do is led by a grouchy character named Mr. Gooey Duck, and he stands behind a counter and he yells at children to get them to do better, and it sounds terrible, but it really works. So some of our relationships with schools have been a little dicey because we're bringing in this very unconventional way of teaching, which they go, "Wah! What does that mean?"
I think for Copious Love, we fail a little bit in everything. And when we do that, we look at it and we're like, how did we fail? Why did we fail? Let's not do that again. So I think failure is a huge part of the growing process. I think I don't think it's negative all the time. I think it's a good learning experience. I think our presenters kind of pointed at that as well. Did you have a question?
Yeah, so it occurs to me personally that progress is defined through change, and so I'm wondering, on the topic of structure, how do you restructure, and when is it appropriate to restructure?
So the question was, how do you restructure and when is it appropriate to do so?
I'll jump in. We use the retreat as a restructuring mechanism, and we also use our meetings, but an example that happened at the retreat, one of the members came and said, I just can't do this shepherding anymore, because she was taking care of, there's a new group of artists every month that aren't members that are showing in our gallery, and they have to be hand-holded, is that the right word? Anyway, you know how that is. And she said, I can't do this anymore. So right there on the spot, we came up with a new system where each person would shepherd a different month. And you know, that in itself has problems because, you know, every 14 months you're the shepherd, so you remember how to do it. But it kind of spreads out the pain instead of one person doing it over and over again. And I like your example of failing a little bit all the time. We're constantly doing that.
Say for BFI and 826, when our relationship with our national office wasn't working and their changes that they were going to make weren't working, we said we have to change. Now is the time to change. It's either that or we're going to languish and keep doing this sort of mediocre crap. We have to really change to improve, and that was the impetus for change. And how to change it, I think it's going to be up to each individual organization what's going to work for them.
I'll say too, we also have an annual retreat where we spend like 2.5 days like locked in a cabin together, and talk about all of the problems and all of the things we're looking forward to and how to best serve the projects. And the structure changes, certainly, and it changes throughout the year. I think that we know when it stops working, and then we pretty quickly assess in a group and try and figure out what else we can do. The ensemble buy-in is really, really important. So even if we have somebody has an idea in it, it's really important to get everyone together to talk through it and see if it will really support the ensemble and the group. And most of the time, someone will have an idea for how to restructure something, and then we talk about it in a group. And then 3 people bring up questions that get us to think about it completely differently. And we end up making a change, but it might be slightly tweaked, or we might have been approaching it for the wrong reasons, right? It might be a change that's necessary, but somebody brings up a point that gets us to shift our thinking. So we make it with consensus, but we're not afraid to make them. Yeah.
We're actually going through a restructuring process right now within Extraordinary Teachers. I think the best time for it to happen is when you know things aren't going well. Things aren't happening fast enough. People aren't pulling their weight. So right now for us, we're trying to kind of put together our board again. We've had some board members that have been on our board but aren't really doing much with that. So we've got to reevaluate our board members and just see if there's anybody else out there that could help us the way we need a little bit more help. So like I said, we're kind of going through that right now. So if you guys know any board members, people that want to be on board. So.
Does anyone else have a question? Yes.
Many of you are artists as well as artist administrators. What about your structured organization allows you to pursue and express your individual arts as well as be involved in a larger organization? Are there any ways for, taking a break from things, sabbatical here and there? Or how does the structure change in order to allow you to do your individual arts?
So the question was being parts of the arts, being a part of the art administration for your groups. How do you make time or continue to make art yourself?
Yeah, I'll answer quickly. So I started with the Satori group as a production manager on one of their projects, and then when we did this assessment, was very decidedly a staff member and not a company member, not a member of the ensemble. But I'm a designer as well, and since we're project based. And when we came up with our production of Returning to Albert Joseph, I was really interested in participating in costume design, which is my training. And I think that the where we made room for it is that everybody, gathers around each of these projects. Everyone serves a role in it, but keeping my sort of staff role separate from the design role. I needed to be aware of it more because I was serving 2 really different functions. But we're collaborative artists, and everyone's voice. I mean, I'm a staff member, but I always feel like my voice is welcome, like a company member, or like an associate artist or a guest artist that comes in, and that's really part of the culture is that everybody's voice is listened to in the same way. So yeah, so serving dual roles, just making sure, like knowing when I might need to pull a little bit out of one and put more into another to make the work keep going smoothly in the way it wanted to. But our organization sort of bends to let that happen.
Margie and Paul, do you have anything to add to that?
We have the official Peloton model because of this very reason, in that if somebody is doing too much, then they kind of step back. Or if you have a show coming up, maybe you're coming to meetings for 2 months because you're just like got your nose to the grindstone. And this is like an official part of our structure and is accepted as how we operate.
Yeah, there's no like official sabbatical, but we know each other's like work. You know, that person is getting busy, then not showing up. It's kind of like implicitly understood. So so it's we are taking turns, and also personally, I sleep 4 hours a day, and like any other artist, just scraping the time, and also when you are tired and like you don't want to go to meetings, or there's another opening of members, but whenever I show up to the meeting, I rejuvenated. So I think that kind of putting, it's what it is what I love to do. So probably that's how it works. I don't know.
Anyone else?
Yeah. So, although I'm the executive director of Extraordinary Features, I'm also one of the main teaching artists. So, for me, just always getting up on stage, dancing, performing. I do it at least once a month. Before that, I was doing it. Let's see, last year I was doing it about every week. So we had a show about every week. This past year, I just got burnt out. I was like, I just got to take a break. Everybody else in Massive Monkeys kind of knows that everybody else is growing up and they have other responsibilities. And there's a saying within the crew, get right or get left. So either you get on board and you continue to do things with the crew, or they're just going to keep on going and you're going to get left behind. So whenever you want to get back on, you're always welcome back on. So that's just kind of how we've done it all the time. And being a crew for over 16 years, nobody's left the crew. I mean, so that's why we have 31 members right now. So.
That's awesome. I think you had a question in the back. Okay, so the question was, how do you find the right members for your organization, and how do you, I'll put it this way, trim the fat? And I think, honestly, I'll start on that, because every arts group that I've talked to has said they have those token members, like you said, who are actually just our friends who hang out, but they don't actually do anything. And they serve their purpose, but I think everyone has those people who don't quite do as much as everyone else. So does anyone have anything specific to talk about? Maybe finding members, let's touch on that first. How did you guys find the members in your arts groups?
A lot of our staff at the BFI are former volunteers. I was a volunteer before I was hired. Most of our staff comes from, they're already there, passionate about the work. And it's important to us that our staff fits our corporate culture, our uncorporate culture. So you have to have a sense of humor, you have to be a little bit strange, you have to be able to kind of roll with the punches and fly with the birds and whatever. So it's important that our staff members fit in, and sometimes they don't, and sometimes oftentimes they do and stick around for a long time. So as for trimming the fat, it's not working out, and thank you so much and goodbye. There's no nice way to fire somebody.
We are all volunteers, so we don't fire people, and how do we get rid of them? They just leave.
They kind of just disappear after a while.
They're not
Yeah.
doing anything. If you're not working on a project, it's kind of not fun. I mean, if you don't get your jollies out of working on a project, then running an arts organization isn't going to be for you. Some people have joined thinking that we're like a support group and that we're going to just be all about talking about their work, and we do some of that, but it's only a part of what we do. And so, some people join and then they go to a meeting and go, oh, no, this isn't what I wanted, and then they, self-select out. To get members, we have a call about every year. We have one out right now if you know anyone that wants to join. I think the deadline is in a few days, so it's for the last minuters. And then we look at their work, and if we like their work, then we vote them in. And the personality part, we sort out later.
And as far as Massive Monkeys goes, we don't do any auditions or anything like that. We don't try to recruit any new members in the group. In order to become a Massive Monkey, you kind of just have to be one of our friends. And that's really it. People have always asked, oh, how do I get down with Massive Monkeys? It's not really a real answer for that. You just gotta hang out, be our friend, and friend everybody in the crew. And the only way anybody would get in would be being voted in by every single member in the group. If there's one person that doesn't like that new person, they're not getting in. So it's just a group of friends.
I like keeping that positivity in the group. I think is really important. All right, so that's all for our question and answer section. So we're gonna break a little bit. We're gonna reshuffle some chairs. We're gonna kumbaya style in a circle, and then we're gonna talk. And this is gonna be your opportunity to tell us about your experiences. And if you have any other questions or nagging things, keep those in mind, and we'll chat about that in the discussion. So let's get some drinks.